Ben Alke, candidate for the Attorney General on the Democratic Party. Ben grew up in Helena, now lives in Bozeman, attended Notre Dame, where he majored in finance and business economics. That was followed by a JD degree from the Northwestern Pritzker School of School of Law in Chicago. Ben began his legal career clerking for the Montana Supreme Court, in particular Justice Brian Morris. He's now a partner specializing in commercial litigation at Christ, Crowe, Alke, and Nord in their Bozeman office. His opponent on the Republican side is the incumbent Austin Knudsen. I think his leading qualification must be his big cowboy hat, because that's all I seem to see. So, Ben, thank you again for coming, and let's start with this question here. We've been inundated with ads about the southern border crisis. How do problems at the southern border rank in comparison with other law enforcement problems in Montana?
Well, thank you very much. Can everybody hear me okay? To start, I think what you need to do when you're getting into politics is understand kind of what the landscape is and what conversations need to be had. And, I was just a regular guy sitting on my couch for years wondering if this was something I was going to do. I'm just I'm a litigator. I've appeared in front of Judge Lynch in federal court. I've appeared in front of the Montana Supreme Court. I've appeared around the state. And I decided to get involved into politics because what I see happening in the Attorney General's office is really, really disturbing and really dangerous. I mean, it's a toxic combination of stupidity and incompetence and sinister motives that need to stop. But you need to understand that when you're talking to people in this state and knowing what issues we face, that you have to have a conversation about these things and have an open and honest and transparent conversation. And so, is the southern border an issue, and is border security an issue in the United States of America? Yes, it is. But is it an issue for the Montana Attorney General to address? No, it's not. I mean, it's a federal issue. And if anybody is running for Montana Attorney General telling you that they're going to fix the southern border, well, they're just full of it. There's nothing that the Montana Attorney General is going to do in any meaningful way that is going to have any effect on what's occurring in the southern border. But the underlying issues that people are upset about with the southern border are things like the drug crisis, because there are some drugs coming across the southern border. There's also drugs coming across the northern border. And there's also drugs coming into ports. But you have to be able to have that conversation and then look at, well, what do we do? What can we do within the state of Montana? Well, what you need to do within the state of Montana are focus on the things that are occurring within the borders that we can do to combat the drug crisis. I mean, for example, in Lake County, the county doesn't have enough funding to do felony prosecutions. And that's because they have a somewhat unique situation where they've agreed to do felony prosecutions on the reservation. And that's the only reservation in the state that is like that. Typically, reservations have their own jurisdictional system, and they're dealing with the tribal court and federal court. Something that the state needs to do is they need to provide more assistance to Lake County. Because right now, if you get pulled over in Lake County, you could have someone who has 3 outstanding warrants. And it could be felony drug distribution, assault, and skipping bail. And they get let go because there's not the infrastructure in place to make sure that you're going to do something about it. And so what you need to do when you have these conversations with Republicans, say, yeah, these things, these broad things writ large are an issue. But what we're trying to do is focus on what is occurring in the state of Montana, not political talking points. Because the Justice Department, similar to the judiciary, is not a place for politics. Your best judge is someone who you can't tell what their politics are based on the way that they make decisions. When they're making decisions, you can't tell if they're a Republican or a Democrat because they're just making decisions based on the facts and the law. The Attorney General and then most of the other statewide boards, positions are similar. If I had my choice, the position of Attorney General would be a nonpartisan position, along with the Secretary of State, along with the State Auditor, along with the Clerk of the Montana Supreme Court. Because if you're doing that job well, there's no part of that job that you do differently, whether you are a Republican or a Democrat. If you allow politics to seep into it and then affect what your decision-making process is, you're not doing your job.
Thank you. As I read your bio, Ben, most of your legal work has been on the civil side. And I'm wondering, since the AG's office does have significant prosecutorial criminal law responsibilities, how would you do your job? How would you structure your office to be an effective prosecutor?
Thanks. That's a good question. And I do need to point out from the outset that the current Attorney General doesn't have a lot of prosecutorial experience either. He became the Roosevelt County Attorney and then ran for Attorney General. And my understanding is the one serious criminal case he had was a felony case involving a young woman who had been assaulted, and he didn't obtain the conviction. In fact, he botched the case and they had to dismiss certain things in what's called a directed verdict. But the job of the Attorney General is not to tell prosecutors how to do their job. The job of the Attorney General is to ask the local prosecutors and law enforcement what support they need to do their job well. Because the Montana Department of Justice is a resource for prosecutors. It provides things like the crime lab that the local law enforcement can send to, and they get tests. They have what's called the Prosecution Services Bureau, where you send prosecutors to remote places, and let's say there's a homicide in Jordan County. You're not going to have a county attorney there who's prosecuted a homicide before. What has happened with the current Attorney General is the office has become so politicized. A lot of the career attorneys in that office are no longer there. In my background is more civil. I do some what you'd call kind of white collar criminal fraud type stuff, more on the civil side, but it butts up against the criminal stuff every once in a while. And what you need to recognize as an attorney is just who are the good attorneys and get them in the office. When Knudsen got elected, there was, I think, 5 or 6 attorneys in the Civil Bureau that had been there since Tim Fox was the Attorney General. And those are people that I have practiced with, both on the opposite side from them and then as co-counsel. And they're all gone. Because the office got so political that they didn't want to be associated with the things that were occurring in the office. And my mission is I get in there, I need to rebuild the office on the civil side and the criminal side, making sure we have the resources, and then go to the local prosecutors and law enforcement officers and say, what do you guys need to do your jobs more effectively? If the answer is, well, in Lake County, we need more people because we don't have the funding or prosecutors to do it, then you send people to go do it. If the answer, let's say in Yellowstone County, is we don't have enough jail capacity, so we can't even get dangerous criminals off the street, you need to know where you need to go to have the conversations that need to be had to fix that. You need to have conversations about when you're doing the budgeting process with the Montana Department of Corrections, make sure we have capacity, have conversations with the Yellowstone County commissioners and that sort of thing.
Thank you. Would you defend a law or Montana agency action that, in your view, patently violates the state or federal constitution or federal law?
No. And the longer answer, the longer answer is your job as the Attorney General of the state of Montana is to be the lawyer for the state of Montana. And so if you're the lawyer and you have a Republican legislature, it's likely that there are going to be laws that are passed that you personally wouldn't vote for. Now, it is still your job as the Attorney General to defend those laws in court when they are challenged. You have to remove your personal views about policy, and you do your job as an attorney for the people of the state. The judges are the ones that are going to make the ultimate decision. However, as a lawyer, you are also a professional, and you're bound by the rules of ethics that govern our profession. And it is not ethical to stand up in court and make an argument that is in bad faith. And your job as the Montana Attorney General, it's your duty to uphold the rights that are guaranteed by the Montana Constitution. So if something is clearly unconstitutional or patently unconstitutional, you can't have an attorney go in and make a good faith argument that it is. The difficult part is knowing when that line is, because it's not always going to be obvious. As the Attorney General, you need to be aware of what your role is. You're not a super legislator that can, overturn the legislature like the governor can. So you have to be cognizant of what your boundaries are in your job, but you also have to be cognizant of, what the rights are. Step number one, and this would be a change in the Attorney General's office, is to have an Attorney General who understands and follows the law.
When Ben is Attorney General, he better not make a ridiculous argument before me as your Chief Justice.
One final question for you, Ben. As Attorney General for Montana, when you appear before the U.S. Supreme Court, will you promise not to wear a cowboy hat? All right. Would you join me in thanking this very distinguished, very talented